I used to work the night shift at a small hotel, and what happened about a year ago still haunts me. Even now, the memory creeps into my head and sends shivers down my spine. Because the truth is, I have no idea what that man's intentions were or what could have happened if things had gone differently. The part that disturbs me the most is realizing just how long he had been there, silently, unnoticed. The hotel itself wasn't much, 3 floors, maybe 40 rooms in total. Hardly a busy place. On most weeknights, only 10 or 15 rooms would be filled. My shift was from 10:00 p.m. to 6:00 a.m. And usually, it was calm. Almost too calm. The kind of silence where you can hear the hum of the lights above you. I would sit behind the front desk, flipping through paperwork, checking the security cameras every so often, and, on the slowest nights, distracting myself with YouTube on my phone, just to fight off the endless hours of darkness. The lobby itself was nothing special, just a front desk, a couple of couches with a TV flickering quietly in the corner, and a pair of vending machines humming beside the wall. Behind the desk, there was a small office where I usually sat, staring out through a glass window that gave me a clear view of the empty lobby. After midnight, the front doors would lock automatically, meaning anyone coming in had to buzz for entry, and I'd press the button to let them inside. Most nights, it stayed quiet, almost too quiet. But that night, everything changed. Around 11:00 p.m., the buzzer echoed through the silence. I pressed the button without thinking, and the man who stepped inside still makes my stomach twist whenever I replay the memory. He looked like he was in his mid-40s, tall, a little thin, but not frail. Worn-out jeans, a baseball cap shadowing his face, and a backpack slung over one shoulder. He walked to the desk, his footsteps unnervingly steady, and asked for a room. I told him the price, and without hesitation, he handed me a card. The transaction went through. I slid him a key card for room 214 on the 2nd floor. At the time, it felt like just another routine check-in, but looking back now, it was the moment the nightmare began. I remember him looking at me a beat too long before he left, like he was studying the shape of my face or timing something I couldn't understand. His expression was flat, almost empty, and his eyes lingered on me for 3, maybe 4 seconds after I slid him the key. Then he turned and walked toward the elevator. Nothing about it set off alarms in that moment, just a weird pause that made me oddly aware of him. I went back to my little corner and scrolled through my phone to kill time. Then, around midnight, I looked up and felt that same cold knot in my stomach. He was back. He hadn't come to the desk, he'd walked straight past me and planted himself on one of the couches in the lounge. At first, I told myself maybe he couldn't sleep. People loiter in lobbies sometimes. Half an hour later, I realized he hadn't moved a single inch. Not on his phone, not reading, just sitting doing absolutely nothing, like he was waiting for something that only he could see. The quiet around him felt heavier, as if the air itself had been holding its breath. He wasn't asleep, far from it. He just sat there, eyes fixed on the blank TV, like he was staring through it. At one point, I stood to grab a bottle of water from the vending machine. As I crossed the lobby, I could feel him shift his head and follow me with a cold, deliberate stare the whole way. I didn't meet his gaze, but the weight of it was impossible to ignore. It hung on my back until I slid into the safety of the desk again. My skin crawled. Around 1:00 a.m., half distracted and trying to kill time, I pulled up the reservation system. That's when the room list punched a hole straight through me. Room 214 was marked vacant. I muttered to myself and refreshed, thinking I'd misread something I had checked him in less than an hour ago. I dug deeper. No check-in record, no name, no charge. Then, I opened the transactions, convinced the card would show up there, but there was nothing. I know what I heard that night, the card swipe, the little beep, but the system refused to agree. For a second, I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. Something about that blank line in the log felt like a missing tooth in the whole building wrong. Exposed, dangerous. I picked up the phone and called room 214. It rang and rang 10 times at least, and no one answered. My heart started to thud in my throat. I pulled up the keycard entry log to double check, and the screen stared back at me. Nothing. No entry, no swipe, no sign that anyone had used that door all night. That's when the cold truth hit me. He'd never gone up to the room at all. My eyes darted to the lounge, and there he was, still a shadow on the couch, staring at the dead TV like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to the place. My chest tightened. Part of me tried to blame a glitch. Maybe the system was broken, but the empty logs and the silence left no easy explanation. I watched him for another 15 minutes until I couldn't stomach it anymore. At 1:30 a.m., I stood up and walked over, voice smaller than I meant it to be, and asked if he was okay. He turned slowly, face blank as a mask, and said he couldn't sleep. Then he looked back toward that black screen and didn't move. I told him to let me know if he needed anything, retreated to the desk, and realized my hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the mouse. Around 2:00 a.m., I looked up and he was gone from the lounge, and that instant, my stomach dropped. I scanned the lobby and finally caught him, half hidden at the end of the hallway by the bathrooms, a dark shape that seemed to be waiting for something. He wasn't moving, just standing there, like a statue, swallowed by the shadows. I kept glancing over while pretending to work on the computer, trying to act normal, but my heart was hammering. After a long, slow minute, he walked back to the lounge and sat down as if nothing had happened, the kind of ordinary movement that suddenly felt anything but ordinary. I called my manager at home, explained what I'd seen, and she sounded exhausted. Her advice was mechanical. Keep an eye on him and call the police if he became threatening. I hung up thinking, this already feels threatening, but I didn't have a better option. So I pulled the camera feeds. The footage was worse than the live view. On the first floor hallway camera, I watched him walk all the way down, stop at the far end and just stand there for several minutes, then return. Later, he slipped into the stairwell and stayed there for nearly 10 minutes. I watched the pixels of his figure shift in the grainy black and white and felt the room grow colder. I still don't know what he was doing in that stairwell, and that uncertainty gnawed at me more than anything. Every time I dared to look up from the screen, he had moved again by the vending machines, by the elevators, half merged with the shadows in the lobby's corners. Wherever the light fell short, that's where he stood, always staring, by 3:30 a.m. I couldn't pretend calm anymore. My hands were shaking as I called the non-emergency line and told them there was a man in the hotel who didn't look like a guest. The operator said they'd send someone, and I hung up feeling a little less alone, only to watch him shift closer to the desk. This time, he planted himself about 15 feet away, eyes locked on me. He barely blinked. He didn't speak. He just watched, like someone obsessed with the very act of watching. I faked typing at the computer while my chest cramped with fear. At 3:50, the buzzer sounded and my heart jumped. Maybe it was the police, but it was a late check-in. I buzzed the guest through and the man turned to watch him walk past. His eyes, tracking the stranger across the lobby as if cataloging him. That detail made my skin crawl. He wasn't just waiting, he was taking notes. A few minutes later, he vanished again. Camera feed showed him standing outside a first-floor guest room door, motionless, like a shadow that had decided to linger. That's when I lost it and dialed 911. I told them he was outside a guest's door, and I didn't know what he wanted. The operator said officers were on their way. I kept my eyes glued to the camera and watched him stand outside that door for a solid 3 minutes, like he was listening for something on the other side. Then he drifted back into the lobby as if nothing had happened. This time, he came all the way to the desk and leaned over the counter too close, too casual. He looked at me and, in a voice so low it felt like it came from under the floor, asked if there was any food. I pointed toward the vending machines. He gave a small, slow smile, one that didn't reach his eyes, and walked away, the kind of smile that sits wrong in your stomach long after the person is gone. I stared at the clock, counting minutes like they were seconds, silently begging the cops to hurry. At 4:10 a.m., 2 officers finally arrived. I let them in and pointed straight at him. He was back on the couch, like he'd been waiting for the exact moment they'd show up. The officers talked with him for a few minutes. ID, questions, quiet exchanges I couldn't hear from behind the glass. Then they let him out. One of the officers came back and told me the part that made my blood run cold. The credit card he'd given me was stolen. He had no reservation, no luggage. He'd acted like a guest just to get into the building. The explanation felt like a thin film over something much darker. He'd been inside the hotel all night, watching, moving through the shadows, and none of the paperwork could explain why. They charged him with trespassing and using a stolen card, then left, but I sat behind that desk, shaking, until my shift finally ended. Every time I blinked at the camera feeds after that, I half expected to see him reappear in some shadowed corner, like the building itself refused to let him go. What messes with me the most is the simple fact. He had been inside the hotel for hours, drifting the halls, standing outside guest rooms, watching from spots I didn't notice until later. He was never supposed to be there. I still don't know what he was planning, and I don't want to. That night didn't just scare me. It changed the way I see every late check-in and every quiet hallway. It was the scariest night of my life.